Hello everyone. If you thought that things in Britain were getting a bit too clown decade-y, boy do I have the video for you. Yes, once again, welcome to another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. If you'd like to keep up with all that nonsense, obviously please subscribe to the channel and become a channel member. And today we have probably one of the most ridiculous stories I think that you could come up with when it comes to the UK, when it comes to clown decade. It's all just a mess. This is possibly the worst story I've seen, just in terms of humiliation for the state justice system, and once again it gives me every reason to vote for reform, because they are very much going to root and branch reform the damn thing and force it to actually be fit for purpose. So, first thing we're going to do is go through Hadush Kebatu's, well, crime list, I suppose. He was charged with 5 counts. One of attempted a sexual assault of a child of 14, incite or causing a child aged 13 to 15 to engage in sexual activity, sexual assault on a female who was aged 14, harassment without violence, and sexual assault on a female. Basically, 4 counts of sexual assault on a girl of 14 years old, and 1 of harassment. Due to, well, sexually assaulting the victim who was 14, I believe the details are, well, actually it goes into it, I don't need to say I believe, I can just read it. Where on the 7th of July, you approached V1, who is a 14-year-old girl, and her friends. You told the girl and her friend that they were pretty, that you want to have babies with them, you invited them back to the Bell Hotel, followed them around the Epping area. When you encountered them again, you made inappropriate remarks. God knows what that was specifically. You offered V1 and her friend some alcohol, none of them took this from you. You attempted to kiss V1, she moved her head away to prevent you from doing so. This is closer to acting like an all-round weirdo. Not that I want to take away from what he's done here. This obviously is a crime and should be a crime, and he should be punished for it. And it should also be noted that this is a very, very summarised version of what actually happened. Again, the details are gone, so maybe that's why I'm taking that away from it. However, it is worth noting that the judge realises that he has no remorse for what he did. So the report indicates that you were very reluctant to speak about the offending. It suggests you raise a lack of English and mental health difficulties as a reason of why you cannot remember what happened or can't talk about the offending. The probation officer did not consider that this was accurate and concluded that you were being manipulative. So it's good to see that not every time they're just rubber stamped through. I agree with this assessment. You repeatedly apologised during the probation interview. You repeatedly cried and said you were ashamed. You also suggested that the UK was too strict. You offered no explanation for any of this. It's evident your shame and remorse is not because of the offences you have committed, but because of the impact they have had. You told the probation officer that you were aware of the unrest that your offending had caused. You acknowledged that other law-abiding asylum seekers were impacted by the offending. However, in the same interview, you seek to portray yourself as the victim and suggest that you may have been made a scapegoat, so you show no remorse at all for your behaviour. And so because of this, we go on to sentencing. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a little bit out of order, but after reading through, there is actually a second sexual assault that he's being done for. So it gets worse. Turning to the sexual assault on V2, you had approached and spoken to V2, you asked her for advice on getting a job and drafting a CV. It is hard to understand why you then placed your hand on her thigh whilst you told her she was pretty. It's easy to understand, the man's a pervert. I accepted her evidence that she gave you no reason to believe that she would want to do so. This isn't that you misread the situation, you simply acted ignorantly and repulsively. The fact that you tried to suggest that she was the one who was acting inappropriately towards you is just as appalling and really highlights the poor regard you must have for women. And it turns out that it was this touch of the thigh telling her she's pretty that actually led to his repeated offending coming to light. So this happened to more than one person, and actually it happened over more than one day, because this assault happened on the 8th of July, the day after the assault on V1, which, as I said before, made this guy sound like a weirdo. This one makes him a complete and utter creep who absolutely should be in jail. And in fact, even just before V2 had her thigh touched, on the 8th of July, V1 was also touched on the thigh. I conclude that that the sexual assault on the 8th of July was the most serious offence committed by you. Of course, the offending on the 7th was an attempt, whereas on the 8th you actually made contact with V1, touching her thigh when you sat next to her on a bench as you made inappropriate comments to her. This is all aggravated by the fact that she is 14, and it's aggravated even further by the fact she's in school uniform. For those who don't know, in Britain you're not even allowed to make porn of people in school uniform because it's considered paedophilia. Doesn't matter what age they are. It's clear that these advances were unwanted the day before, and, well, no doubt you're emboldened by the fact that there have been no consequences for your previous behaviour, so he carried on touching her thigh, making inappropriate comments, and then obviously doing it with V2 as well. So yeah, disgusting person, put him in jail. Fast forward to the sentencing. He was given a 12-month sentence to be taken immediately on the day of this sentencing. Time he spent in custody while awaiting trial and all that was put towards this sentence. It's fine, that's usual. He was also put on the sex offenders register for 10 years and was also ordered to pay prosecution costs of £650, liable for a mandatory surcharge in the sum of 187, and that will have to be paid within 56 days of his release from custody, which obviously came much sooner than he thought. Sorry if that's a little bit of a spoiler. He's also sought a sexual harm prevention order, as he posed a risk to sexual harm of female adults and children for the reason already outlined. The information before me is clear. There is a significant risk of you committing a further sexual offence, and lack of any explanation for your behaviour suggests that you do not only pose a risk, but that your behaviour is also unpredictable. The order is necessary to protect members of the public, women and children, from sexual harm by you. So this isn't just he's in jail and he's fine to go from there. This is he's in jail, has to pay just under £1,000, well, close to £800 actually. And on top of that, he's also registered with the state as a sex offender. This is a high-risk individual. I just want to make that clear. This is why I wanted to go through this. This is someone that should be pretty much known by all of the justice system and the police. Anyway, the details of this prevention order are, well, they're quite strict. So he's prohibited from approaching any lone female not previously associated with him on any public highway, common land, wasteland, parkland, etc., 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 other than inadvertently and not reasonably avoidable in the course of ordinary daily life. In other words, he's not going to jail if a random woman accidentally bumps into him. Must not follow, harass, or intimidate any female in any place to which the public have access to. This condition does not include following a female which is inadvertently and not reasonably avoidable in the course of lawful daily life. Having any contact, communication of any kind with any child under the age of 18, or seek to be in their company other than such as inadvertently, blah blah blah, with the consent of the child's parents or guardian or other person accompanying that person under 18 who is over 18. Parents or guardians of the person over 18 must have full knowledge of this, blah blah blah. Oh, and must have full knowledge of his sexual offence, right, got you. Yep, that's part of the problem with being on the sex offenders register. You are required also to allow a police officer or designated monitoring officer appointed by the Chief Constable for the area where he resides unhindered access to his registered addresses or any address he is residing therein upon request to confirm that he is complying with the conditions of this order. And on top of that, the defendant must provide his monitoring officer with a list of devices in his possession and control that are capable of accessing the internet and or storing digital images or videos within 48 hours of his release from custody, and thereafter within 48 hours of coming into possession of such a device. In other words, he's got a lot of eyes on him, as he should do. And yet. So, on Friday the 24th of October, that, by the way, is exactly a month to the day after he was sentenced, so he was in jail for a month of the 12 he should have been. I'm not sure how long he was in custody before that. But bear in mind, high-profile prisoner, basically the whole reason that Epping has been having a whole bunch of protests for months. He's released from HMP Chelmsford, wearing a prison-issued grey tracksuit, also holding a clear plastic bag containing his possessions. The prison released him on the expectation he would be picked up by immigration enforcement, and the Home Office was ready to take Kebatu to an immigration removal centre, it is understood. But it's unclear what exactly happened next. Because a lorry driver who was delivering equipment to Chelmsford Jail on Friday told Sky News correspondent he saw the confused offender outside the facility being directed by prison staff to the city's railway station following his release. Sorry, the prison is trying to say, oh, we thought that immigration removal was going to take him, and then they go on to say that there was a witness who witnessed the prison officers telling him, oh, train station's just down the road, mate. The offender is said to have returned to the prison 4 or 5 times but was turned away each time. This is wild. Again, we saw it in the sentencing guidelines. When he's out of prison, he needs contact with an officer so he knows what devices he has that can connect to the internet and store images and videos. Did that happen? Don't think so. They just told him to go off to the train station. There was footage later that appeared to show Kebatu in Chelmsford High Street. In the video, he appears to ask a group of people for help. He's in prison clothes. He's in a grey tracksuit. That's our prison clothes. Problem you have there is that, well, it doesn't look too different to what someone might wear on the high street anyway. It's not fashionable, but it will do, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think most people know what people in prison actually wear. The whole point of, the old stripes and number on the shirt that you used to have was that you were very identifiable if you did get out. They apparently don't have that here. This was, by the way, recorded on some random Instagram reel or TikTok live, I'm not sure which. Literally just random people on a live in the middle of Chelmsford. I'm not sure if they recognised him or if he just happened to be in the background of it, but the point is that if he was recognised, why was he not stopped by anyone? And I'm not being funny, but someone walking around like this with a clear plastic bag, that's actually rather inconspicuous. Again, one change I think Reform needs to make about prisons is change the prison uniform so that, it's got very identifiable graphics on it. The old arrows you had on it, that made it obvious. The stripes with the number on of your prison or prisoner ID, that's another good way to do it. Just a grey tracksuit. Yeah, you can just blend in. I definitely changed that because I think that's part of the reason he got away for so long. So at 41 minutes past 12, the prisoner boards the Great Anglia London-bound train at Chelmsford Station. By the way, train station, lots of CCTV everywhere. The trains themselves, CCTV on every carriage. And then 10 minutes later, the train arrives at Shenfield Station in the Essex borough of Brentwood. And then at 12:57, Essex police are informed by prison service that Kebatu was mistakenly released. This article doesn't exactly say what time Kebatu was mistakenly released, but we can assume that it was relatively early morning, possibly between 8 and 9. I mean, the guy tried to re-enter the prison 4 or 5 times and then seems to have wandered into the high street, asked for help, and then wandered to the train station. I can see that taking about 2 to 3 hours. Maybe 9's a little early, we'll say 10. Still, it took hours for Essex police to be informed by the prison services that they made this mistake, despite the fact that this is literally the most high-profile prisoner that they have. Just incredible. The forces say it had launched a search operation and is working closely with partner agencies, and by the time the search started, the train that Kebatu boarded at Chelmsford had already called at Shenfield according to Trainline data, and so it's probably out of Essex Police's hands. So obviously public appeals were made not too long after this. At 12 minutes past 1, Kebatu is spotted leaving the train at Stratford in East London, and God knows where he was for 5 hours, but he was captured on CCTV at a library in Dalston and was apparently there for 2 hours. In fact, we've got footage of this CCTV. Just behind someone who didn't recognise him, he's managed to swap his clear plastic bag out for one that's got nice avocados on. No idea where he actually got that. On the bright side, this makes him very, very, very easy to identify. The grey tracksuit, well, a lot of people might be wearing something similar to that. However, the avocado bag that, let's face it, is clearly supposed to be more appealing to the females of the country. Yeah, you're not going to see many men with a bag like that in a tracksuit like that. The man just wanted something that was easier to carry than a plastic bag. So, according to the Times, the Ethiopian who arrived in the UK on a small boat in June was to be deported back to the East African country by the Home Office in the coming days. I saw nothing about that in the sentencing guidelines. I guess that's why the prison were expecting the Home Office to come take him and deport him. There you go. As the Met Police led efforts to locate Kebatu, Commander James Conway of Scotland Yard urged him to hand himself in. Well, he probably doesn't know English very well. The Met said on Saturday night that Kebatu had been last seen in Dalston, East London, shortly before 8 p.m. on Friday, carrying a white bag with pictures of avocados, instead of the clear plastic bag he had left the prison with, and had visited the library there. This gets even worse when we have further comments from the delivery driver who was at the prison. He came out of the airlock and kept saying to the officers there, "Where am I going? What am I doing? I don't know where I'm going and what I'm doing." He came over to me and said, "I need you to help me." Siv added, "In my eyes, he wanted to do the right thing and go to the right place. He knew he was getting deported, but he didn't know where he was going and how he was going to get there. The officers in the prison didn't seem to have any interest in helping him either. The commotion was back and forth, back and forth. He was standing around the prison trying to work out where to go, maybe for an hour and a half, maybe a little longer, before one of the officers told him how to get to the station. Which is crazy because originally I thought they said, oh, the deportation officers are going to come and get you to deport you. And now it's all go to the station. No wonder the guy was confused. On top of that, when he was accidentally released, he was given £76 as subsistence payments. In other words, payment you give to prisoners to help them get home. I get why that's okay. I get why they do that. After all, he's going to be paying an awful lot for that back anyway. I mean, ultimately, the point I'm trying to make here is that Kebatu was dazed and confused. He probably didn't even know he was being hunted. Probably didn't even know he was being hunted. Had to ask random people on the street what he was supposed to do. Knew full well he's getting deported. He seems to have been in the acceptance phase of that. And yet all this happens and he's, well, has to reevaluate. What am I doing? So just goes to London. I don't know why he went to London. As far as I can tell, the guy got over in June, was put straight into a hotel, 2 days later sexually assaulted 2 girls, and has been in prison ever since. I can't think of a good reason as to why he even went to London, but he did. Anyway, the next day, 25th of October, over 24 hours after he got the train, the Met Police announced it has taken over the manhunt for Kebatu. Why did it take that long? In a statement, Commander James Conway says senior investigating officers are examining CCTV from around Stratford Station and further afield to establish information about the prisoner's subsequent movements. Yeah, you better. We've got enough CCTV there. A big problem you actually have with CCTV is that a lot of them are actually private, and so you have to go into shops, find management, ask for permission to look at the CCTV before you can actually look at it. And this all obviously takes time, and this is probably part of the reason that he ended up going missing for 24 hours. Anyway, for the rest of the 25th of October, the day after he was released, there were basically no updates beyond James Conway making a direct appeal to the public about Kebatu, basically saying, if you have seen this man, please call the police. They also believe Kebatu has access to funds, that he sought assistance from members of the public and station staff in both Chelmsford and London. How's he got access to funds? How's that happened? And how, frankly, how can't you track that? Because now we move on to Sunday the 26th of October. 8:30, after receiving information from the public, the Met traced Kebatu to Finsbury Park, where he is arrested and taken into custody. He was missing and loose for close to 48 hours. Don't know exactly how long, but pretty close to 48 hours where it may as well be. At 9:30, the Met Police put out a press statement confirming the arrest of Kebatu and say, "This has been a diligent and fast-paced investigation led by specialist officers from the Met Police, supported by Essex and the British Transport Police. Information from the public led to Finsbury Park, and following a search, they located Mr. Kebatu. He was detained by police but will return to custody of the prison service. Extremely grateful to the public for their support following our appeal, which assisted in locating Mr. Kebatu." Yes, very good, and I do put pretty much all the blame on the prison service for this. How do you accidentally release someone? Well, apparently, from what I've been hearing for the past few days, this happens all the time. They release like 50 people a month by accident, apparently. Like, why is there a need for an early release scheme by this Labour government if they're releasing people by accident all the time anyway? It's crazy. Politicians generally are shocked by this decline. I can't say I'm particularly shocked. With Chelmsford MP Mary Goldman saying, "My mind has been blown, how could this possibly happen?" Because everything sucks in the UK, it's clown decade and nothing works. There you go. The Liberal Democrat also goes on to say, "It is obvious something has gone terribly wrong and we really need to understand what went wrong. And crucially, we need to understand how to fix it." And she called for a full and rapid public inquiry into the mistake and said Essex police should be given all the resources they need to find Kebatu. Obviously, this was before he was found. "We need to make sure that this not only never happens again in Chelmsford, but that it doesn't happen anywhere in the country. I just don't understand how this can possibly happen." Well, unfortunately, the BBC found that government data showed more than 260 prisoners in England and Wales were mistakenly released in the year leading up to March 2025. And Stowe said it's absolutely true that some staff aren't correctly trained because of the squeeze on spending on criminal justice. They need more money, of course, that's what they need. To be fair, to some extent that's probably true, but just to be clear, that is 260 prisoners released in 3 months. That's only up till March. that means that we're looking at over 1,000 released to this point, and one of them just happened to be very high profile. So it's just incredible. And an MP saying, oh, this should never happen anywhere. It's already happened thousands of times. Sorry, our system is just completely broken because everyone wanted all money to go to the NHS. And that sucks as well. Stephen Robinson, the Liberal Democrat leader of Chelmsford City Council, said Kebatu must be located and deported as soon as possible, while we've even got the Lib Dems saying deportations have to happen. It's outrageous, he told BBC Breakfast. Chelmsford Prison is used to handling people who are coming and going because it's mainly a remand centre, and so they should be used to dealing with this. Kebatu was arrested on 8th of July and released in error 108 days later, so absolutely nowhere near the 365 he was supposed to serve. Justice Secretary David Lammy said he was appalled and livid on behalf of the public. When Keir Starmer described the release, he described it as totally unacceptable. Again, we've probably had about 1,000 already happen this year. Neil Hudson, the Tory MP for Epping, was one of the first politicians to publicly call for a full closure of the Bell Hotel in July. On the Kebatu error, he told Radio 4's Day programme the book has to stop somewhere and it has to stop at the top. The Justice Secretary, Home Secretary and the Prime Minister. Yes, we need a complete root and branch reform of the whole damn thing. The justice system from top to bottom, the laws we have in place and all that. Something like a Great Repeal Act would be good. I wonder if Reform have been talking about that. Oh, they have. Luckily, after all this, we had David Lammy on the case telling us what we can expect from the government and police service and prison service and deportation service.
As you know, this was totally unacceptable. I will be making a statement in Parliament tomorrow. There will be a further and full investigation into how this happened.
More inquiries, more suggestions, then nothing changes. Great.
You say he will be deported. There is a flight tonight from Heathrow to Addis Ababa at 8:15 p.m. Will he be on that flight? And if not, why not?
It's right that he's questioned by the police following his route from Essex into London, and then, of course, 48 hours in which he has been basically around. It's right that we get to the bottom of what's happened over the course of those 48 hours, but I can assure you that he will be deported as he was expected to be deported. I expect that to happen this week.
Bit of a dodge of the question, but yes, I think having him as part of the investigation is probably very useful. How did you get released? He probably won't actually have many things to answer in that particular interview, but you never know, there might be something useful. But as long as he gets deported, how many days do we have left? Okay, next month, then yeah, I don't have too much of a problem with what Lammy is saying here. But it is quite clear he's stumbling over his words a bit. I think a lot of the ministers are finding that actually being in power is quite difficult and a lot's expected of you. And, well, they're clearly still not used to that after a year, so isn't that funny?
We know one member of staff was suspended. Will anyone else get fired due to what happened at the prison on Friday?
A member of staff has been suspended, and it's right that there is a full independent inquiry into what has happened, and I'll be announcing that to Parliament tomorrow.
You get the idea. Lammy isn't very good at his job, frankly. He has nothing more to say than what has already been announced. No further clarification, which is fine, but I don't know why he needs to basically just say anything more than don't know yet, going to have an inquiry to find out. That's all you need to say. So anyway, that is the story of Hadush Kebatu's great escape. We really don't know more details than he was very dazed and confused, didn't really know what to do, and while in a dazed and confused state, stumbling around London and parts of Essex, literally asking as many people as he could for help, he ended up in Finsbury Park for some reason. I want to know why he was in Finsbury Park. Why, when a man came over on a boat, ended up in Epping for a few days before sexually assaulting a woman, teenage girl, get that right, two of them in fact, spent the rest of his time in jail. Why would this good-for-nothing end up in Finsbury Park? Why would he even know to go to London? What network is there for illegal paedophiles that made him think, I will go to Finsbury Park? I would like to know that, because he must have been sleeping somewhere. I don't think he was out on the streets, sleeping on the street. I think he was in a network somewhere, being housed in a HMO from someone he knew maybe. I don't know. That's why I want it investigated, because the fact is he shouldn't have been released in the first place, but second, it shouldn't have taken 2 to 4 hours for Essex police to realise that they had an escape, well, not an escaped, an accidentally released convict on their street. And then it probably shouldn't have taken as long as it did for the Met Police to take over the case and actually find the guy. But ultimately, what happened in the end? They relied on public information rather than the CCTV, which was supposed to keep us all safe. You know, you've got facial recognition software now. What is going on? Honestly, it's a crazy story, but it was the funniest from over the weekend. Because if we didn't laugh about this, we'd cry. So, there we go. And I will leave it there. So if you enjoy what I do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Do become a channel member, leave super chats, super thanks as well. Of course, tomorrow on the Worcester Club, we are doing a Tosh Talks on what the new right looks like, and I have an awful lot of things to say about that, so do come along to that panel. Wednesday, it's more Life is Strange on the gaming stream, and then Friday, Wolves of Westminster will be out. Saturday, Laughing at the Guardian with some Warman. And we do have a special guest coming back who has not been on a stream for some time, so do look forward to that. Right, with that, videos out as and when I can make them. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.